Welcome, America, to the Truth Crusade with your hosts, John and Ray, where truth and honesty meet false narratives and the disingenuous. John, how are you, sir?
I am wonderful, my friend. How are you today?
Living the high life, except I'm a little sad. I know you're wearing the hat, and I gotta be honest with you, it was a good day, but I was also thinking about our brother in arms, Mr. Toby Keith.
We are wearing our cowboy hat today to honor Toby Keith. Toby Keith was a great American and a patriot. And so I wanted to honor his memory with the hat here. So I got some interesting videos for you today, buddy.
I did see the previews. I didn't delve into them, but I can only imagine seeing the two individuals on the screenshot. So, but I did want to just just piggyback on you mentioned Toby Keith. I don't think people realize, maybe they take a minute and look back at some of the stuff he's done. He was a huge advocate for not just the U.S. military, but for America, and that it was, his patriotism was pretty obvious, his love for the country. And so obviously we were sad. I was sad when I heard he had stomach cancer diagnosis, and I obviously knew this day was coming, but hearing some of his songs that he wrote after 9/11, like American Soldier and Red, White, and Blue, um, pretty awesome stuff. And I definitely shed a tear. Like I told you earlier, I shed a tear as soon as I heard that. It's just, you know, almost unfair when the good people get taken from us, but, you know, it's in God's hands. And so that gives me some peace.
I know I remember something I heard a long, long, long time ago. I was struggling. I wasn't quite a Christian yet. I was kind of searching and going in that direction, and I was watching a show, and somebody's made a profound statement, and it like, stuck with me. And it kind of pertains to something you just said. And so, what the situation was a girl had lost her mother, and she was couldn't figure out why, and she was very upset, and she started praying, and she heard a voice, right? And she said the voice said to her, "Sometimes God needs to pick the most beautiful flowers in the garden." And yeah, right. It's kind of profound, and so that has stuck with me anytime situations like this come up where we think, well, maybe it's not fair.
Yeah, especially when, it's hard to, if your children or young kids ask you, why was my uncle taken? Why was, someone they love taken? And it's hard to explain to them sometimes, the God's purpose for these people, people that, they're in their humanly bodies here, but they're in their heavenly bodies there, and serving a different purpose. So but yeah, it's hard to explain to a kid. I've had my struggles with it as well. So, but you know what? I hope he has peace, and his family has peace. And I heard that it was his family was there, and so certainly, can appreciate that. So always need our family there, always.
Sir,
So John, okay, so I did queue up these videos you selected for me, and so I am going to, let's see, I'm going to make sure that I can get this
on
video up.
remember the first one, we want to start at 3 minutes and 30 seconds because it's about a 6 minute video.
The Senate one, or
The Senate one.
okay, so we'll cue that one a little bit further. Let me you said 3:45.
About 3:30.
All right, I'll go slightly before that. And
The court concluded that
you hear,
there
John?
were restrictions that were not neutral of general applicability.
Yeah. That's legalese. Why didn't they? Why didn't they on the facts? You know the facts. You were a good lawyer. Why'd you lose?
We lost because applying the strict scrutiny test, the court concluded that the restrictions were not narrowly tailored to
Because?
serve a compelling governmental interest.
Because?
Senator,
Oh, come on, Judge. Don't make me do this. Do you want me to go through it for you? You lost because Mayor Bowser was going to mass protests herself personally with thousands of people celebrating them. By the way, which is fine. We have First Amendment in the United States. I want to be clear. That is totally fine. You want to protest? Go for it. I think that's totally fine. That wasn't the problem here. At the same time she was doing that, she was prohibiting churches, religious people, from gathering socially distanced outside wearing masks. And the district court said, you can't do that. That's discrimination. You can't separate people out based on their ideological beliefs or their positions. You can't do that, right? Isn't that what the district court said?
the district court said that
Do you
the
agree with
restrictions could not survive strict scrutiny.
For those reasons, right? Why are
That-
you fighting me on this? I can't figure this out.
I am not fighting you, Senator.
So yes, you agree. That's what the district court said.
That was what the district court concluded.
Do you think they got it right? The district court get it right?
The district court, we did not appeal that decision. I think that district court decision is consistent with rulings that we got from the Supreme Court clarifying the application of the religious test to COVID-19 restrictions in Tandon and the
Do you
Brooklyn
think my time's almost expired, and I know other senators want to ask questions, so let me just very quickly here. Do you think it's wrong to discriminate on the basis of religious faith?
Absolutely, Senator.
Why did you argue that religious services, religious people pose a greater risk of infection than people gathered to argue for defunding the police?
I was representing my client. The mayor and consulting epidemiologists had issued orders that she thought were going to protect public health. It was my role to defend those as a
Why did you
member.
make that argument? That seems like a strange argument to me, that religious people are somehow, more infectious than folks who have other ideological positions? I don't get it.
My understanding was the nature of singing and other things epidemiologists thought could transmit COVID at a higher
You didn't
rate.
put any scientific evidence on the record for it?
Senator, those were fast-moving cases, and they weren't going to full briefing and full summary judgment with a record.
That's not what the district court said. The district court said that you engaged in, and your client engaged in, and you defended discrimination on the basis of religious belief, that you offered no scientific evidence for it, that you pressed these arguments over and over and over without any foundation.
Let me pause there for a second, John.
You
There's a
can,
lot.
you can stop that particular video. You can stop there because that pretty much made the case, I
Well,
think.
first, let me tell you, Senator Hawley's a stud. Let me just tell you right now.
I love him.
This dude is a pit bull.
Where's he from, by the way? What state is he from?
Oh, Holly. Oh. You know what? Shame on me. I don't know. I've seen him a lot. I think he's an East Coast senator. I'll double check that. I'll put it in the notes, update this video. So shame on me for not knowing. Usually I'm pretty good about this stuff, but no, I blew that one. But unpack a little bit here. Number one, I think it's interesting because you and I remember what was going on in 2020 pretty vividly. You and I were getting together for breakfast with the boys pretty regularly because we needed some fellowship. We needed to get together, right? So so the churches were invaluable at that time, and they were being shut down. And I remember even during Easter services where local churches here were, and this pit churches against other churches, because some churches were saying, well, they were as scared as the regular individual out in the public, scared of this virus, and they were worried, what could happen, right? And others like me who were saying, you know what, it's better for us to get together, have that fellowship during a time like this than to not have that, right? But what Holly's point is, not only is it ethically not good, and there's no sound medical documentation that she could submit, this was strictly a judgment call, because at the time, you had Black Lives Matter being able to protest in every city in the country, no mask, screaming and yelling, doing all these things, right? And yet churches somehow, like, as he pointed out, rightfully so, that somehow they were more prone to spreading something, even though they all agreed we'll wear masks. They even prohibited in some cities people getting together in cars in a parking lot with a loudspeaker, sitting in their cars having church, right?
I remember a few instances where people would show up to church in their cars to listen to a message in their car in the parking lot. And when they showed up, those nails and glass and things strewn all over the parking lot because somebody hated the church so much that they decided that they would pop their tires.
Well, and
By
then this is a clear case of discriminatory behavior on the part of politicians because they obviously, those two things aren't too far off. Whether you're out protesting and yelling or you're singing a song, and in fact, the groups that were out there on the streets were far closer sometimes than I am to other churchgoers. So we knew that was ridiculous, but there was no legal grounds either. And so, of course, you and I both know that during that time, people were scared to speak out because the popular consensus was, oh, we have to stay home and blah, blah, right? So, and no one was fighting things because we couldn't go out to the court and protest, right? We couldn't do that. If we did that, we'd be arrested. But Black Lives Matter could protest all they wanted to. And you had the mayor of this town and other mayors condoning that, right? And that's a clear-cut violation of our civil liberties, but it was definitely an attempt to suppress the church and suppress people's right to gather as a church group. It was basically, I think the intention was they did not want our strength in numbers and our strength in God to bring us together and unify us. They wanted to divide people and keep people away from each other because they were, as you know, passing all these funding bills and giving each other money left and right during his time as well. So,
all right, so do you think? I know what I think, and I think you kind of answered this question already. Do you think this was an intentional attack or an intentional attempt to suppress religious people, or was it more political? What do you think?
I think it didn't start off as intentional, but what they realized really soon was that a larger portion of the public who goes to church or is church going is more conservative and more apt to fight the system, right? So if they suppressed our rights, if they suppressed our ability to gather, we couldn't have a consensus of thought, right? If we get together, we're talking about stuff, right? We're gathering and gaining strength among our group. I don't think it was intentional at first, but they realized, let's see how far we can take this. Let's see how many civil liberties we can take from these people, what they will tolerate, and to what lengths we can go, because then we can use this in the future to see how many other civil liberties and church and the right to gather, the right to go to church that we have, what can we take away that the people will tolerate, right?
And this brings up a point that I believe we talked about during this time. I remember it was you and me and John and Dave and my dad. We still got together. We had our Bible studies, we had our fellowships, and we talked about this. And I think we all came to the same conclusion that this is going to say, what I'm about to say obviously is going to sound like some weird conspiracy theory. But really, we came to the conclusion that this is just a test. How far can we push the people of the United States and of the world? How far can we push them before they push back? And it's funny, I remember with weeks only before this happened, there was people all over Facebook, all over the internet talking about how they hate the government and how they want to rebel against the government. But the second the government brought up something that threatened their health, bam.
Isn't it interesting though, the same individuals who've been railing against big pharma and
Yeah.
right and hey, they're the evil corporations were the same ones to hop on board with, we need a vaccine and we need Pfizer and Moderna to come in and save us. And then when things died down, it became, oh, well, you still need to stay home because, well, not all of you have vaccines. And if you don't have a vaccine, you can't work and you can't go to church and we have to test your temperature. I mean, they pushed the limits of everything, right? All of their ability to govern, they push the limits.
When I was finally allowed back to work, they gave us about 2.5, 3 months off. When I was finally allowed back, for about 6 or 7 months, I was required to take a test every week.
I remember you telling me that.
And then it became every month. And then, finally it went away. But some other things happened as well. Once we were allowed to go to work, they gave us, if you were vaccinated, they gave you a little V, a sticker to put on your name tag. So people could distinguish between who's vaccinated and who's not. And then they did something else. They did this thing where if you weren't vaccinated, you had to park in a separate parking lot and come in a separate entrance. So
I did not know that. Oh my goodness.
So they could scan you, with a thermometer where they waved over your head before you walked in the door. Now that didn't last more than a few weeks because there was an uproar about that. And so the reason why I wanted you to see this video, didn't really have anything to do with COVID or anything like this, as much as it had to do with division. And how I believe, and you know me, and you've known me for a long time, and I've been telling you for a long time, and I believe you are on the same page, that this is, whether it's the media and the government are aware of it or not, this is not an accident. The division, the hatred, the attacks, this is, when I mean attacks, not just physical, I mean verbal.
Mm-hmm. It's the very basic equation of divide and conquer, because
yes,
the ability for them to control a population squarely relies on the idea that we don't have a unified thought process to fight against something, right? And if we don't have a unified thought process to fight against something, well, how do we use the division that we can create with this to gain access to more power, right? So you have individuals in different government entities and in companies who are using this as a power grab and said, okay, I can restrict some and I can let others do what they want for political reasons, right? And not only am I going to, in that time, I'm going to gain votes later on because, well, more people want to be safe and be protected, right? The old we're all in this together garbage, right? Which is actually absolute garbage. That doesn't get any more communist than that. We're all in this together is basically a way of saying, yeah, we are, but then we're going to divide you and make you fight against each other, unvaxxed, vaxxed. Oh, you're calling me an anti-vaxxer, right? All of that stuff started happening.
Do you remember seeing the news and some of these commentators saying that people who weren't vaccinated should die? They shouldn't be allowed into hospitals.
MSNBC, I can pull up 20 videos of them and Rachel Maddow. Well, first of all, Rachel Maddow claiming that if you get the vaccine, you can't spread it, which was garbage, among other information that was incorrect. But yeah, literally saying that they shouldn't treat people who weren't vaccinated in hospitals. People who aren't vaccinated shouldn't be let to go to work and make a living. And then, of course, you had the big convoys of truckers in Canada, for example, not just this country, but in Canada, who Trudeau, when they had a blockade there and said, hey, these guys were like, you know what? We don't want to get vaccinated. We need to deliver product to make a living. Trudeau basically froze all their bank accounts, put half of them in jail, simply because he didn't agree with them and they disagree with his politics. So you're talking about a power grab. It was a power grab here in Canada and several other countries.
Well,
so it wasn't limited to the US.
In Canada, they locked up pastors. I remember seeing a pastor in jail.
Videos of pastors getting arrested at their homes because
yes.
they connected church the previous Sunday. So
yes,
we can probably come back to this, John. I love this video, but if I keep talking, we're never going to get to the second video. And I have something I wanted to talk about at the very end, like a 2-minute thing with you as well.
All right, so to set up this video was taken in 1965, first of all. And this video, you'll understand once you listen to it.
Oh, whole thing, right? We're doing the whole video?
Yes, this video will answer, I believe, a lot of the questions that we had just discussed about the previous video.
All right, let's do it.
If I were the devil, if I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to
Harvey.
engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have 1/3 of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree, thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing.
So the fact
Wow.
that was done in 1965, when none of that stuff there was no metal detectors in schools in 1965.
Wow, John, I got to tell you, I've seen some prognosticators, some predictors, and I love Paul Harvey. I mean, it doesn't get much more iconic than a guy like that, right? But the fact that he is spot on, and he's saying, if I were the devil, this is what I would do. And the fact that 98% of what he just talked about is happening right now. Not only is that, well, it's scary on one end, but it also goes to show you that it's been predictable, right? We knew as a society and people who in position of influence that could have maybe redirected some of these energies in a more positive direction than Paul Harvey's talking about, knew that they had something to gain from pushing all the agendas he just talked about. right? Whether it's priests in churches, whether it's the media, whether it's parents and getting married, and the idea of promiscuity, right? And the idea of, um, well, I mean, he went over so many things, but just the idea of being a good person and not promoting evil. I mean, he is so spot on. This is one of the best videos I've ever seen. And the reason I say that is because you can literally go through this, and I'm going to watch this again after we get done here, and I'm going to probably agree with even more. I think I missed something, but how is it possible that he could be this accurate 50 years ago?
That may actually it's more like right 1965, so you're talking 35 plus like 24. Yeah. You're talking about
59 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So think about this. And this is what I meant when I said this video would explain the other video. You see, the devil's biggest trick was convincing people that he never existed. By convincing people that all of this is their own idea. If you haven't seen it, go look up. I don't know if it's on Amazon or Netflix or where it is. Nefarious. Nefarious is a movie where this guy interviews somebody, prisoner who is condemned to death and turned out to be possessed. And the things that this demon says, right, is it actually got banned a couple of times until people had
this was that movie where it was basically all filmed in a room, the entire movie, right?
Yeah. It was an incredible movie. So the point,
we should give out movie recommendations. There's a lot of stuff you and I have seen that has predicted and almost in awe, like, as far as its accuracy goes, of some of the things that we're seeing today. I really thank you, John, for bringing this video to my attention, because, I love Paul Harvey before, but man, I have another level of respect for him now.
well, this and I was trying to hit on this point before we listen to this, that the division that we're seeing and the anger and the hatred that we're seeing is not an accident. It's not just a byproduct of some bad decisions. Somebody up here is pulling strings and making decisions.
It's almost like millions of people ate the apple all at the same time, John.
Yeah. And so, the media is under control. And here's an amazing thing. So you've heard of BlackRock, right? The investment company.
Absolutely. They're evil company.
A couple of years ago, I did some research on them. And what I found out is that they own, by the way, BlackRock is an investment company. They buy companies and then
they have a huge 401k presence in the United States.
And so what they do is they buy things like banks. And so they own really whole countries. They buy the banks of small countries. And now the country needs to, use that bank to do their business. They also own companies that are on both sides of the political spectrum. So what happens is they have control over everything. So they play the two against each other. And so my point with that is that I believe the same thing is going on. Someone somewhere has control over the liberal media, the conservative media, politicians on both sides. And it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't have control over some churches and
not at all.
If they can cause division, then they can cause a collapse. If they can
this is what I read about BlackRock and a couple other things, and I believe that this is very possible. But just to close up on BlackRock, because I want to bring up something else with you.
Sure.
BlackRock, I believe, is planting individuals in churches, and what they're doing is they are collaborating with the IRS. Because what they're doing is they're putting people in churches and they're telling they're feeding information to the IRS and government agencies about churches that are influential. Two reasons. If they could get to the pastor and the parishioners, if they get to somebody of influence within the church to start putting out a message that they want, that's number one goal.
Wow.
Number two goal is, if they're not, is to have the IRS help shut them down by going after them. Now, I'm not saying BlackRock is behind this, but this is the kind of stuff that they fund, and guys like George Soros as well fund.
Yes.
Behind the scenes, they put people in situations. You can believe me or not on this video, but just think about the possibility if someone were to not like you, and someone not like something that you're doing, they could have somebody work for your company, get all your secrets, give information back to somebody who doesn't like you to do some damage to you, right? So we know that this is a very possible scenario, but
yes,
everything is pointing to that because they're trying to bring the church down. They're doing everything they can from every angle, whether it's the media, right? The losing the importance of church, as Paul Harvey said, right? Lessening the importance of God, making it so that people are not thinking about marriage, or they're living in sin. They're living in situations where promiscuity is promoted, and then you have churches now who have been either bought or promoting things that we know are not in the Bible, and they're doing it under the guise of religion, right? So
yes.
there's a lot going on. We could unpack this, John, for another 12 hours, and I'd be willing and happy to do that. But you know what? Unfortunately, we have limited time. So I think we should re-delve into this, if that's even a word, with BlackRock and a couple other things. Maybe in the next episode, I'll do some research. I'd really like to look at that. I'd like to look at the influence of, as Harvey was saying, the media and the degradation of church values, or even values in general. That's degraded society in general. I think that's really something that we could go for hours on it, but let's probably circle back to that. I did want to bring up one last thing to you that I just was listening to today. So you have this the border situation, right? Which is bringing a lot of the criminal element and a lot of evil into this country, and it's being allowed because our politicians want to utilize these individuals as leverage, whether it's for voting leverage, money leverage, funding leverage. So you have what's called a border bill, right? It's a border bill that it has some support on both sides of the aisle, and it's under the guise of money for the border, right? Beefing up border security, but it really has no teeth. But it has a second element to that. I'll mention to you, and I'll get your opinion on it in a second. Element number one is it basically says that the borders will stay open as long as they don't get to 5,000 or more people coming into the country a day. Now add that up. So do the math on 5,000 a day. What they're saying is, and this is Republicans as well, what they're saying,
365 times 5,000.
so 5,000 times 365, 182,000 people basically every year minimum. That's only what they know about, right? Being allowed in and having to pay for their services, for their food, for their medical care, everything else, trucking them around the country to different places wherever they want to go, right? That's minimum. And they're pushing those into Texas and Arizona, two states that they want to flip big time to Democratic states. Number one. Number two is that bill is laden with two things, and this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. $14 billion for Israel, okay, and $10 billion for Palestine and the Gaza Strip. So they're playing both sides. They're attaching this to a border bill. People don't realize this. Go read the bill. It's nuts. And you have Republicans trying to push this as well. I suggest everybody look into this who's watching this show. Go take a look at it. What's in that bill? They're playing both sides. Okay, we're going to give money to Israel because we want to help you and want to placate to you. Oh, but let's also give 10 billion to the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip for humanitarian aid at the same time. Well, which one?
Okay.
Playing both sides on a border bill, John.
Okay, one, What the hell does that have to do with our borders?
Exactly.
In number two, like you said, playing both sides. Didn't we just talk a few minutes ago about playing both sides?
Hmm.
And by the way, we had mentioned this last show, I think it was. Well, if I kidnap, you got 5 kids, and I kidnap all of them and give you back 2, you're not going to stop beating my ass. Well, guess what just happened? Hamas offered a peace deal where they would give back all the hostages if Israel removed their military.
It's like selling your soul to the devil, John.
Okay, so but
You got
here's my
1 minute.
point.
You got 1 minute.
So here's my point, though. I'll try to make this real quick. Apparently, what Israel did, at least looks like it worked. They beat them into submission, and I'll see if they follow through. It's a question. So that's all I have to say on that.
You know, and now we'll delve into it more, but I want everybody on this show, go take a look at what your senators and congressmen are doing. Not even just Democrats. These are Republicans. These are independents. Uh, they're trying to pull wool over your eyes and get attachments onto these bills for their own interests and to play both sides and to try to get voters right one way or the other or both, right? Try to play both sides of the coin. So don't be fooled by that. Do your own research. I suggest you also listen to Glenn Beck's show. He talks about this as well. My goodness, they are trying to pull the wool over your eyes, and your money is being used. You know, if this continues, we'll have no money. We're printing money, and we're doing digital money now because we're running out of money a long time ago. So we'll delve into that as well later on. But John,
Like and subscribe and hit that button. Boop. Okay. And
yeah, we would love to have some input too. Please, I mean, if you disagree with us, let's talk about it. If you agree with us, let's talk about that too. But also some suggestions on some topics. I think John and I would love to hear your feedback and share with your friends. We have no problem
yes,
debating as long as it's intellectual. And as I said in the beginning, no false narratives and disingenuous people, because we'll fight against that every day, and we'll till the day I die, and probably till the day you die, John. And we'll probably trust in God and country and our families. I'll leave it at that.
all right. God bless, my friends. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.